Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Avarice Podcast. I'm Devin, and I'm here to reinforce all your fears about white people. You know the deal. So, today, we're going to analyze Michael Myers' motivation. And I'm not talking about his family connection and all that. I'm going to ask you a big favor. You're going to have to unlearn damn near everything you've held core to your belief system about the Halloween franchise since day one. I need you to remove the idea from your head that Michael and Laurie are related. It's tough, I know. It was difficult for me. I've had to struggle with it. But through that process, I've been able to learn that we can achieve more of the maximum potential from the shape and the Michael Myers character once that connection is severed. It does not get proclaimed that they are related till Halloween 2. And a lot of people ask themselves, including me, when the newest Halloween came out, why did they get rid of the family connection? Why are we going all the way back to just Halloween 1? What purpose does this serve? And the answer is right there in the question. The purpose it serves is getting rid of the family connection because that allows Michael to be in free roam mode. It's like when GTA switched from only missions to a sandbox. Vice City, when you started being able to go into buildings that weren't part of a mission. You could go into damn near every building. You could interact with more stuff. It creates more opportunities, more options for you. If you are limited by that family connection, and by all accounts, Jamie Lee Curtis has wanted herself removed from the franchise for decades. Once you get rid of her, if his motivation is killing family, now we've got to start getting arbitrary, far-fetched, watered-down, oversaturated, tired connections via cousins and brothers and aunts and whatever the fuck. So the more I think about it, the more I understand the decision to erase all of that and take it back to its core. Halloween 1. What was Michael? What was the dynamic between he and Laurie? What was going on there? Was he actually focused on her 100%? Or do we just apply that in retrospect? And is it easier to do so because she's our main protagonist and a lot of it is from her point of view? So as the sole survivor, we would suspect that according to all the tropes that followed afterwards, the final girl trope, which this movie is said to have created, it stands to reason that she was his main target. That's usually how these movies work. But this is the original. This started it, and it's not necessarily what happens if you watch it with an open mind objectively. Excuse me. So I took some notes on kind of the course of events, what order they happen in. I'm going to tell you right now off the top, it's probably going to piss some people off. I don't think Laurie was the main target now that I watch it with a clean perspective, fresh eyes, as if it's the first time I ever watched the movie and really paying attention to what happens. If anything, he seems to be most interested in Annie, and everything else is incidental or collateral from that point on. And he almost seems confused. He doesn't seem to know what he's doing himself, or he's very curious and interested. And it seems as if he's like grading these people or analyzing their behavior and deciding how he feels about them. So let's get into it. Michael doesn't speak at all in the film. So all we have to go off about him is what other people say about him or on his behalf, namely Dr. Loomis. So Loomis is trying to create this image and this lore the entire time. He's the boogeyman, blackest eyes, pure and simply evil. Excuse me, all of that. So they're really trying to, it's not he hates his fucking family, he was abused, he doesn't like his sisters, he's jealous. It's none of that. It's pure and simple evil. And he's reading that off of essentially a blank canvas. My only contention with that is that his first murder he commits of Judith, his older sister, when he's 6 years old, We don't get a lot of hints as to why he did that. There's not a lot of evidence. There's not a lot of motive to draw from that. But when he goes downstairs and his parents take his mask off, the expression on his face does not seem to equate with the description that Loomis later gives for the child he met. Those two don't seem reconciled. And he makes no attempt to go after his parents. He doesn't seem out of control. He doesn't seem aggressive in any way. He seems bewildered, maybe slightly remorseful, confused, in shock. But there's not a lot there to hint at him just being gone, just purely and simply evil, as it were. And, of course, there's no baby in the house when he commits that murder. There's no Laurie Strode, 2 years old, being babysat by Judith also. I do have one theory that might work, whereas Michael maybe has a very primal sense of ego, and when he feels like someone has done him wrong, he gets murderous urges. So perhaps there was a situation, his sister was ignoring him, it was Halloween night, he wanted to go trick-or-treating. We don't know exactly what led up to it, but perhaps he felt wronged by her in some way, and that led to this murderous outburst. And then afterwards it was released. The object of his abhorrence was gone, and he was just calm and placid. That's one possibility. So, of course, he's locked up for 15 years. He escapes, and he beats feet for Haddonfield. Back to home base. Almost like a comfort thing, like that's where it feels safe. He immediately goes, well, not immediately. He breaks in, steals the mask. He likes being hidden. He doesn't seem to want to be exposed. He buys the mask, or doesn't buy. He steals the mask. He goes home to the Myers house. There, he's just kind of hanging out. And Laurie and Tommy come up to his stoop and kind of invade his space. And that's when he sees them. And Tommy bears a striking resemblance to Michael when he was 6, when he committed those murders, when he went away. And that might be the last time he felt like he had an identity. That might be the image that he resonates most with in his mind, his digital self-image, as it were, on the Matrix. And he kind of locks onto them, but not in an aggressive manner. He seems curious. He's interested. So what does he do? He gets in his car and he drives to Laurie's school. I don't know how he GTA maps this shit and figures out what classroom she's in and knows where to park his car so he can stare in the window at her. But he just watches her. He's curious. There's no intent behind this. It's inherently creepy because of how he looks and what has happened previously in the movie. And it's generally frowned upon to just stare at people in public like that. But there's nothing aggressive or evil about what he does. And from there, he goes to Tommy's school. He gets out of his car. He goes to the playground. Lonnie runs into him. He leaves Lonnie alone, just stops him and lets him go. Nothing threatening about it at all. And then he strolls along the chain link, running his fingers ever so gently through it like strands of silk, and watches Tommy stroll across the playground. And Tommy in that moment appears to be ostracized, bullied, and alone. And I think that Michael maybe relates to that, sees himself there. He follows Tommy for a short while. He leaves him be. Now, the girls all leave school. They come walking around the corner. They're going down the street. Moments later, Michael comes around the exact same corner. So in theory, he is coming the direction. He's coming from the school. He just drove by the school, presumably. He kind of does his slow creep by them. Again, curious, interested. Something about Laurie was intriguing to him. He goes to speed off, maybe embarrassed that they're looking at him, feeling awkward, uncomfortable. Annie yells at him, "Speed kills," which may be one of those shots at him, like I was talking about earlier, somewhere where he feels somebody was rude to him or wronged him. He slams on the brakes, and maybe in that moment he decides Annie is the victim, and he takes off again. Again, in his video game map trick, he goes around to the other side of the map, parks his car, and strolls out from behind this bush, and he is watching the girls again. PJ Souls, Linda, has already broken off. This seems like maybe a strategy to find out where they all live, but none of that really pays dividends later. None of that comes to fruition, so we don't know exactly why he's doing this. He's just curious. He's just interested. He doesn't even seem to know what he's doing himself, almost driven by urge and impulse. So at this point, he's behind the bush, and he's spying on Annie and Laurie. Laurie notices him because she's the most aware of all these girls, of all these characters. And because it's from her point of view, we assume that he was only spying on her by herself in certain circumstances. But maybe he was spying on Annie at her house and PJ Souls at her house, and those two were just not observant enough to pick it up. That is a possibility. He hides behind the bush. Laurie tells Annie. Annie goes over there. He's nowhere to be found. Annie splits off at her house. Laurie goes to her house, goes into her bedroom, looks out the window, and there's Michael standing in the neighbor's backyard, staring up at her through the window again. Just observing. Just eerily calm, blank expression. Obviously, he's wearing a mask, and he's just staring at her, and then he disappears. And she's creeped out by it, but there's nothing there to say what his intentions are. From that point, we go to excuse me, Annie picking Laurie up to go to the Wallace and Doyle so they can babysit. At some point during the car ride, Michael starts tailing them. We're not exactly sure how he knew where they were going to be, where he was coming from, but that's what he does. He follows them all the way to the Doyle's house. They park the car. He parks the car. He ignores Laurie entirely. He doesn't pay attention to her at all. It's almost as if at this point he has deemed her and Tommy the innocent ones. He has written them down on his good list. He doesn't seem to care about them. He has no ill will towards Laurie or Tommy. But he goes straight over to Annie, who did the speed kill shit, who took that shot at him, and he starts watching her at that house. That's his initial point of focus. That seems to be first priority, if he even has a priority. Whatever urges he's following, that urge is sending him in Annie's direction initially. So then he does the slow stalk around. He really seems to want to get his bearings, a lay of the land, figure out what his plan of attack is. And maybe he's a bit of a voyeur. He seems to enjoy watching these people when they don't know that he sees them. He does the great strategic move. Of course, it was worked out to his benefit that the situation presented itself, but Annie goes out to open the car door. It's locked. She goes in to get the keys. She comes back out, doesn't notice it's already unlocked and the windows are fogged up, but he's in the back seat. He does the angry strangle move where it seems like he's releasing something. Seems like there's something pent up there. There's subtle variations in his kills. A lot of his kills are like quick chops, slices of the throat. Look at how he killed his sister, his very first kill. He stabbed her a shitload of times. I'm maybe reading too much into it, but generally in a real-life crime, when something like that happens, it's personal. There's a vendetta there. There's emotion attached to it. They have skin in the game. When he kills Annie, it seems like an emotional release. It's kind of sexual. It's he is releasing all. Plus, he's been locked up for 15 years. He is releasing everything he has had pent up since he was 6 years old, and all the shit he perceives to have been piled on him, and the sly comments. He's taking it out on Annie in that exact moment, and he seems to be quasi relieved. He carries her body into the house. And he stays there. Bob and Linda come to him. They show up at the house. All the power's off. I think it's partly because Michael doesn't like to be seen. He likes to work in secrecy. It would make sense he likes to be in the dark. He doesn't like people watching him. He likes to watch them. So Bob and Linda come in and they start fucking, eerily similar to his sister and her boyfriend, possibly reinvigorating any urges or ill will he had towards his sister. He kills Bob when he comes downstairs. It's possible that he regrets not killing the boyfriend of his sister, and since this situation is almost a mirror image of that, it makes sense to me that he goes for the boyfriend first. He's like, wait a minute, the girl stays in the bedroom naked after the sex and the guy leaves. Let me get the guy and then the girl will be there. Linda calls Laurie. She gets strangled while she's on the phone. That's what brings Laurie's attention to the situation. Of course, before that, we've had Tommy saying he sees the boogeyman and everything like that, but she just attributes that to little kid nonsense. She doesn't believe it. But after that phone call, she's a little more wary. She's got goosebumps. She doesn't know exactly what's going on. She looks over. All the lights in the house turn on, then they all turn back off. And she's like, well, fuck, I guess I need to go over there and see what's going on. I'm having trouble communicating with my friends. Sounded like somebody just got strangled. All the power's off. I don't know what... I got this kid I'm not even supposed to be babysitting. I don't know when she's supposed to go to bed. So Laurie then comes to him, just like Linda and Bob did. He didn't go try to kill her. She came into the house and found what he had done. And whatever emotions that came from that, fear of being locked up again... that seems to be the point in time where he decided that he had to kill her. They have their struggle in the Wallace house. She evacuates the premises. She crosses the street. He pursues her. She makes it into the Doyle house. And then we have another... the only time he actually chases her in an aggressive way is after she's already discovered the crimes he's committed and she's now a loose end. He's vulnerable. He has to close that door. Or he's probably afraid of being locked up again. He did just break out. One element I forgot to talk... he takes Annie's body and puts it on the bed at the Wallace house with the tombstone, Judith's tombstone that he stole. So there seems to be some type of symbolism, some type of significance that means something to him. Annie seems to be what the main target of his ire, and like I said, everything else was sort of collateral. And when he goes over to the Doyle house, he doesn't try to pursue the kids at all. He leaves the kids alone. He leaves his parents alone in the beginning. He doesn't try to fuck with Lonnie. He doesn't try to fuck with Tommy. He doesn't try to fuck with Lindsay. He seems to have some meter for people's innocence, unless it pertains to his survival and safety specifically. He seems to have some type of a moral compass in regards to others. He seems to view children as innocent. He seems to disregard Laurie as not a threat until she basically throws herself into the fire by coming to him at the other house. There's no indication that he ever would have crossed the street and pursued Laurie if she hadn't come over there to investigate what had happened to her friends. It's just not there. In retrospect, after the sequels come out and we start this familial thing, you can go back and watch it and that still makes sense. You can apply that to it, but it is not there at the beginning. It's truly a mystery what exactly he's doing. Like I said, it's almost like he's just got out and he's in his sandbox and he's just going to watch this person and watch that person. And for some reason, somebody catches his eye and that is where he goes. He takes care of them and then he's just kind of hanging out again until somebody else comes into his area or he finds somebody else that rubs him the wrong way. There's not a lot of rhyme or reason to it, except for the whole they wronged him thing, like I was talking about before. He might have, whatever egregious offense Judith committed that caused her to be murdered, the speed kills thing with Annie, dumping off her babysitting duty so that she can meet up with her boyfriend. He might have been offended by that. Then Linda and Bob come over. They're fucking on the couch. It's exactly what his sister was doing before he murdered her. Probably reminds him those feelings and then Laurie comes over and sees what he did. And even though he's committing a crime, that's still to him probably a personal offense. Like he probably felt his space was invaded. At the very least, he has to take care of the issue now. And then after Loomis comes in and shoots him, and after he gets shot and falls off the patio, he leaves. It's like, okay, he seems to have some innate fear or respect for Loomis, like some type of a dad or big brother thing, a mentor and an apprentice. He doesn't seem to be interested in attacking Loomis, going after Loomis directly. He seems to evade Loomis whenever possible. And I guess now that Loomis is into the situation and has a gun, the fact that Laurie knows what he's done is moot. He's just going to get the fuck out of there. And that's where it ends, where we still don't know. There was no even indication that he would have gone after Laurie again from that point on. Because in a traditional slasher film, everything that comes after Halloween, the killer would get up and come back after the victim. He wouldn't fucking just beat feet and leave. He wouldn't flee the area. So that's possibly even more of an indication that he was never truly interested in Laurie. It was just happenstance. And once his safety was put in jeopardy, he got the fuck out of there. So it's kind of crazy that this movie is coined, or a lot of the tropes that developed from horror are attributed to starting at Halloween. Halloween is the origin point. But if you really look at Halloween, that's not what was going on. Jamie Lee Curtis is the final girl. Yes, she was the final girl, but I don't think she was the main target of the killer. And the killer surviving and having this kind of superhuman comeback and everything that follows, that's the purpose of that, is to come back after the victim. In this case, it was just so Michael could get out of there and go do whatever the fuck else he wanted. So I felt like that was important insight for me to have when thinking about what happened in 2018's Halloween and how they're going to pursue moving forward with that. It's possible that after Michael escapes that Laurie's basement in 2018, that he doesn't try to pursue her. Maybe he flees and she tries to pursue him. It's a lot of it's up in the air when you remove the family thing. And then there could be certain mysteries tied into the first one that we don't know about. Maybe she caused that bus crash. Maybe she felt like she needed to force the interaction. Maybe she was slightly offended that he didn't want to pursue her that way, that he only tried to kill her after her friends were dead and when she brought herself into the picture, and he got up and ran away afterwards, and he hasn't tried to break out and come after her. Maybe that's fucking with her. Maybe she has some kind of weird ego issue. Maybe she becomes the hunter and the seeker like Loomis. Maybe he stops having a certain one specific victim and he's just out and about and they have to try to find him. There's a lot of possibilities, but I think that there's a lot of evidence that points to Annie being the primary and initial target, and Laurie just being a victim of collateral damage, happenstance, coincidence, whatever you want to call it. It was incidental. She brought herself into the picture, and that's when Michael started having to deal with her. And even in 2018, it's possible she caused the bus crash. We don't really know. She shows up drunk at the restaurant to meet her family afterwards. And then she doesn't seem overly emotional or startled by the revelation that he's escaped. She just seems to get into gear, get into fight mode. The only argument I would have for that is, if she did cause the bus crash, why didn't she just try to deal with him right there? Why did she flee the scene and then wait till he was out in the world and try to find him? Maybe that was too obvious and that she felt it would be incriminating, and this way it was more ambiguous. Then she's listening to the police scanner. She hears the 911 call from the little black kid's house, and she goes there and finds Michael. She shoots him. That's the only time in that movie that Michael actually comes to her is way at the end. He comes to her house, and that could be just settling up. That could just be a vendetta at this point. That could have been something that has been built up over time, but not necessarily his original intention. He now has a foe, an enemy, somebody who's comparable. Somebody tries to hunt him as much as he tries to hunt them. Maybe he sees her as a threat that has to be removed because he's not going to be safe in the world until she's gone. There's a lot of different ways to take it. I think that they may even go down a road where Loomis's intentions may be questioned. I was looking at, and I saw some weird evidence and correlating things that could point to Loomis being not necessarily what we remember him as. But I'm going to make an entirely different podcast about that in the future. That basically concludes my thoughts on the motivation of Michael in the original, how it pertains to Laurie, what was going on, and what that means for the future, and the perspective that the original Halloween actually needs to be viewed from properly. And I'll admit myself, up until the last couple times I watched it, I wasn't able to achieve that. I always just transposed the fact that she was his sister onto the original when I watched it, instead of really observing it for what it is and seeing what happens the course of events, the priorities that he does, and how a lot of the things are inherently creepy but not necessarily aggressive. You can't draw any intention from him. He's just standing and watching. There's even the scene where he is standing over across the street at the Wallace house, and he's just staring in the window, and Tommy sees him. You can't really tell, is he staring at the Doyle house or is he staring at the Wallace house? Because that's when he's going around scoping out Annie. It's highly likely that he is just staring at the Wallace house, and it appears from a distance he's staring at the Doyle house. But he also has this fascination with watching Laurie, but that's all he's done is watch. Even if he is staring across the street at the Doyle house, he never takes any action until she invades his space and finds the evidence of the murders he's committed. Even the Phillips mechanic that he kills, where he gets his coveralls, he hides that body up in the weeds. He seems to not exactly be proud of what he's doing. I guess the one argument for that would be the Judith tombstone with Annie all sprawled out on the bed. That seems to be a trophy, not trying to hide it in any way, shape, or form. But I'm just so fucking jacked trying to figure out where they're going to go with it, and I can't wait to see the new ones. Avarice Podcast channel. You can check me out on YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, your mom's house, on the local corner, wherever. You can find me out here. Like, subscribe, comment, all that good shit. Until the next time, this is Devin signing off and saying, I'll beat your mother's ass.